This is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
A lovely morning to you once again, and thank you so very much for being with us up to this time from 6:30. I want to believe, but in case you've just joined us, still welcome to Good Morning Uganda Agenda, an extension of Good Morning Uganda. I'm Robert Chirabo, and it is all about Martyrs Day celebrations. It is one of the main events actually on our tourism calendar, because I don't know any event in Uganda that on a single day attracts guests both internationally, locally, and that devotion as the Martyrs Day. So even when you go to Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, one of the things that they cherish so much is this day on their calendar, because it has sold Uganda internationally, and of course we have international visitors jetting in for this very celebrations. Now, today I have a very interesting, very respectable, and actually I must say I'm humbled and I'm honored to have the guest that I'm going to be introducing to you. He is a former big person in the legal fraternity. He is currently the chairperson of the Elders Forum. He is Justice James Ogola. That's where many of us know him, but for today, I just learned today that he happens to be a canon. So he's Canon Justice James Ogola, and he's also a Chancellor of Bukedea Diocese. He has done so much in the spiritual realm as well. I stand to be corrected by him, but according to my sources, he's the man who translated the Bible into Lusamia. You're most welcome, Justice James.
Thank you, Robert. It's a pleasure to be here.
And well, talking about Martyrs Day, we know it is the Eastern Region organizing, and Bukedea is one of the 10 dioceses that make up the Eastern Region, because I'm informed around, just I think from the Bridge Ginger to continue up to Karamoja and all that. So this year, on the Anglican side, you're the ones organizing. But someone would like to know, where do we see the chairperson of the Elders Forum? Where do we see the man, actually, whom we know as, he is a former justice, and we've seen him in that spell. Where do you connect now with the Uganda Martyrs for this year's celebrations on the Anglican side?
Thank you, Robert. You called the place Bukedea. You're right, there is a Bukedea. It's a town, just a little to the north of Mbale. But what you meant to say was Bukedi.
Bukedi.
Bukedi is a diocese, but just beyond it is a place called Bukedea. So for the sake of our viewers, let's have that one straightened out. Bukedea is a place in the east. So it's Bukedi, a diocese of the east. So how does Justice James Ogola, former principal judge, get into the business of matters? Justice Ogola, when he's not a lawyer, he's not a judge, is a man of spirituality, deep fundamental spirituality. And that's what brings him into the arena of those who gave their life, who sacrificed their life for their faith. And we who live have a duty to rededicate ourselves every once in a while, to bring ourselves into the situation of those who had to give up their life. And that's why we have a Memorial Day, June 3rd, every year, so that the people of Uganda and international community can come to Namugongo, the two Namugongos, the Anglican and the Catholic, to rededicate ourselves in our spiritual life, to emulate, to take example of those who went before us and who gave the ultimate sacrifice of their own life. That's how I come into this. But again, superficially, I happen to be the chancellor of Bukedea Diocese. Chancellor is the legal advisor to the diocese. And since the administrative arrangements for this year are being done by the dioceses of the East, then I am sucked in as part of the East, but more particularly so, the leadership position for these 10 dioceses and the 10 bishops, their head, their chair, is the Bishop of Bukedi, which is my diocese, to which I am the Chancellor. That's how come I'm into this.
Now, let's look at the arrangement. Saturday is not very far. We know huge numbers, and actually the numbers keep on growing since we had lapse when we had 2 years of not having Uganda Martyrs celebrations due to COVID-19. What, take us through the arrangement so far. What should we expect? How far have you moved?
Robert, a very good question. We are expecting the largest crowds ever to the Anglican site. As I said before, Namugongo has 2 sites. There's Namugongo Anglican, Namugongo Catholic. The Catholic people have been flocking there every year by the millions. The Anglican was not like that for the longest time. And when we had COVID, that made it even less. People didn't come at all. So we've been building up numbers, and we believe that this time we are going to have the largest numbers ever. We are expecting pilgrims in the region of 40,000. As we speak now, a number of them have arrived at the site. Pilgrims from Lango, Kigezi North, Ankole, number of dioceses in Ankole. All those are here now in Namugongo. As we speak, those from Busoga, number of groups are coming in. And I think the first group is already arriving. This morning, maybe they'll be there. But also this morning, another group in Busoga are setting off. They're being flagged off from St. James in Ijinja. As we speak, pilgrims from North Mbale Diocese, Mbale Diocese, Sebei Diocese are on their way. Yesterday they were somewhere around Lugazi. They are very close to arriving. Pilgrims from Bukedi, they should be crossing the Nile as we speak now, on their way here. Karamoja, Soroti, Kumi, they're on their way. I'm mentioning those only from the east because these are the dioceses making the preparations. But all the other dioceses in the entire Church of Uganda, 37, almost 40 dioceses now, they're also sending their people. And so total should be around 40,000 by Friday, the 2nd of June, just the morning, the evening before the D-Day of Saturday, 3rd June.
Now, Justice, you said this time around you're expecting the highest turn up in Namugongo Anglican. What are the factors you're attributing this? Is it because the Eastern is one of the biggest regions with 10 dioceses, or is there anything unique that you can stand on and say, maybe we'll have these numbers?
It's partly the numbers of the organizers. That means the mobilization is larger. 10 dioceses is not a small group. But even more importantly, these 10 dioceses cover a huge geographical territory, which runs from the northern shores of Lake Victoria, beyond the shores of Kyoga in the middle, all the way to the border with Sudan and Kenya in North Kamaramoja. It's a huge territory. I don't know how many administrative districts are in there. It's a huge number. So mobilization has been big in the churches. But at the same time, I think the fact of COVID is probably a factor here. They say there's always a silver lining to every cloud. COVID was a terrible thing, continues to be a terrible thing. It shut down church and faith work, at least in terms of structures where people could go to temples and churches and so on. Those were closed out for the first time in the history of this planet. Now that things have eased a little bit, it must be that the silver lining on that cloud is beginning to show. And I will not be surprised that this is one of the reasons why this is happening. But the other one is that we, the organizers of this occasion, have gone out of our way to make a media blast. We have sent all the media houses to the 10 dioceses to profile them, to tell the country who are these 10 dioceses, who are the bishops there, what are their programs, what are their, who are their Christians, and they have been going and combing the entire place, and then coming back and putting these on TV, in the print media, in the social media, on radios. So there's that big media blast that we have deliberately made, and it's beginning to show its fruits. And many other reasons. There must be people who are touching their own hearts and saying, my faith determines that I make a little sacrifice to this. Let me walk, let me trek to Namugongo.
Now, you've talked about the huge numbers expected, but what is the organization like?
We have put in place a wonderful menu from which to choose. We have put in place activities before, during, and after June 3rd. So far, we've had 2 wonderful activities. We have had children participate in this, and we had their day on 26, I believe. A whole day was dedicated to the children. We had 2,000 children come to Namugongo. They had a blast of their life in terms of faith. They read the Bible, they sang hymns, they played, there were balloons there, and we allowed them to walk 2 kilometers of pilgrimage from Namugongo to Chaliwajala. The next day we had the youth. They turned up in thousands, and they had their thing, singing, dancing, sermons, Bible study, fellowship. It was a wonderful day for the youth. We have been having press conferences at the site and off the site. Today we have a big final meeting on these arrangements of this day, the big plenary. Of course, there will always continue to be smaller meetings afterwards. But then we have the mothers coming in, Mothers Union and Women Fellowship. They're going to come in on Friday, the eve of the D-Day. They will have their fellowship there. We have the Fathers Union and Men's Fellowship coming in on Thursday. Those are some of the activities that we are having there. But also, we have put up a huge structure that is we call the amphitheater, the pavilion, if you will. Up until now, pilgrims to the Anglican site were sitting under trees, under the shade of the tree. And if the weather becomes nasty, it rains or it's too hot, they seek shelter. Now we have covered the place. It's a wonderful structure that we have put up there with a podium, with people sitting, and wherever you sit, you can see the podium, the altar, so to speak. Now this one is going to be commissioned, and we're expecting His Excellency the President to come and do the honors for us. So that's another activity out there. And then the media are going to be holding press conferences on the site, starting today, almost every day until D-Day. Those are some of the big activities that we are doing. There are lots of meetings going on, lots of other conversations going on, lots of other activities smaller than the ones I've described. It is a beehive of activities at Namugongo Anglican site.
Okay, now that well said, beehive brings me to a question. Usually for these functions, remember last year it was Ankole Diocese, if I remember very well.
Yes, it was.
And we usually come up with a budget. And at some point we hear the voices to come and be part of God's work by giving. How far have you moved with the budget? Do we, because Saturday is not very far, do we make an appeal for maybe we need to get certain things done and we still have stringent? Sometimes we've even been told that sometimes we've received this from government. If you're at liberty, Justice, to give us this information.
I'll give you some of the information, but in the generalities, because the specifics would be taken up by our specialist committee on this, finance, accounting, and so on, mobilization and so on. But generally, this thing does not come cheap.
Yes.
It requires a lot of money at two levels. Level number one, to put the infrastructure in place. And that is not so much the business of the organizing cluster, that is a business of the committee, a permanent committee at Namugongo that's putting up all the structures in Namugongo. The roadworks, the amphitheater, the pavilion, the museum, the tower. All these things are huge budget expenditure activities. And it's in the billions. But we are making our way there. The amphitheater, for instance, is more or less ready. I would say it's probably 90 plus ready to receive the people that are going to come on Saturday. Huge amounts of money. And derived from the church, from friends, from well-wishers, and also from the government. We must say our thanks to the government, to what it's doing, to these sites, if you will, they're like tourist sites. But more fundamentally to me, these are sites that project the name of Uganda abroad. Because people are flocking in by the thousands when they hear about the high moral ground of this country. And in no small measure, this is by the things like shrines and sites that we are putting up all across the country. The Catholic one is one. The Anglican one, Namugongo, is another. There's another big one coming up in the north to memorialize Saint Janani Lowum, late Archbishop of Uganda. There is a site that we are putting up in Muchwini, somewhere in Kitugum. There's another one to the east, a number of them. When we talk about Martyrs of Uganda, we tend to concentrate on Namugongo and Munyonyo. But there are other sites where these martyrs came from. Gonzaga Gonza, for instance, his real home is from Kamuli in Busoga. Matia Mulumba, his real home is from Chebando in Mayuge, Busoga. And then one very special matter in terms of being one of the very first ones, but also in terms of being a leader of the church, Bishop James Huntington, who was murdered at Chando in Busoga, but whose body, as it went back to England, passed through a village on the border of Kenya and Uganda in Busia district, in a place called Budimo. He stayed there for almost a week. his body was put aloft on a tree to avoid the lions and the hyenas eating it up as a dinner. That tree still exists, maybe 300, 400 years old now. That tree was made a site, a Martyrs site. The Archbishop of Canterbury, 1998, came and made the honors at that site. And so it's a mini Namugongo. I call it the Namugongo of the East. Pilgrims have flocked there. Archbishops have flocked there. Archbishop of York. All the archbishops of Uganda have been there. Wow. Anglican and Catholic. Catholic archbishops. His Grace Emmanuel Obo of Tororo Archdiocese has been there. His Grace John Baptist Odama of Gulu Archdiocese has been there. I'm digressing a little bit, but to give you the magnitude of what it means to develop these places, the budget is horrendous. But we must do it in phases, slowly, but deliberately, and it will pay off. It's beginning to pay off.
Well, we'll be going for a very short break. When I return, I'm still with Canon Justice James Ogola, with whom we are discussing Martyrs Day preparation from the Anglican perspective, where he happens to be the Chancellor of Bukedi Diocese. Hope I've gotten it right this time.
Bukedi, you got it right.
And also a man who translated the Bible, that is in Rusamia, his mother tongue. Let's return. Keep with us.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
The Resol Agribusiness Show is here under the theme Revolutionizing Agriculture through Value Addition, Innovation and Technology, scheduled for 13th to 16th June 2023 at Ohinga Stadium for Portrait Tourism City, with a free medical camp running throughout the show. Entrance is totally free. To sponsor, partner and participate, contact 0702 301 059 or 0773 458 492 or 0773 301 059.
Juko.
Yo.
Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Uganda, haven't you heard of the parish development model PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a portrait project, and now things are moving.
Juko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The parish development model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
For 10 years, the Uganda Film Festival has been shining a light on Ugandan cinema. This year, we're celebrating a decade of excellence in filmmaking, innovation, and storytelling. Get ready for a week of physical and online workshops, masterclasses, and film clinics with some of the most experienced film experts in the business. Experience the magic of cinema with a diverse lineup of films from Uganda, Africa, and beyond. The festival runs from the 22nd of May to the 2nd of June 2023 and culminates with the Awards Gala, a glittering event that recognizes and honors the best in Ugandan cinema.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Welcome back from that break. Thank you for being with us on UBC TV. It is Good Morning Uganda Extra in case you have just joined. And this is an extension of our morning show, Good Morning Uganda. Just to remind you, every weekday from 6:30, we are here to kickstart your day. The Fantastic Four, there's so much that you can't afford to miss. And then we carry on into Good Morning Uganda Extra. Now, in case you've just joined, we are discussing 3rd June, which is the Uganda Martyrs Day, and celebrated at Namugongo, where hundreds gather. And I have Canon Justice James Ogola, that is a former principal judge. He is the chairperson of the Elders Forum, but also happens to be the chancellor of Bukedi Diocese. And that is from the Anglican side. So my guest coming from that side is where we are focusing at. But remember that day we have Protestants, we have Anglicans, all celebrate their matters. Now, we want to look at who is behind this entire organization and their structure, and the structures being followed for this year's Anglican side.
Thank you, Robert. As we have been saying, it's the 10 dioceses of the East, we call them the Eastern Cluster, that are organizing 2023 Martyrs celebrations for the Anglican site at Namugongo. But that's a general statement. Who precisely among them are the ones, what are the administrative structures that are doing this? First and foremost are the bishops of these 10 dioceses. They have been meeting in plenary over time. In the beginning, they used to meet at a convenient place, which happened to be Mbale, more like central. If you take the north, Karamoja, in the south, Bukedi and Busoga, Mbale used to be like the central place where they could all meet in plenary. They are, of course, assisted by their colleagues, diocesan secretaries, the chancellors, the heads of laity, and so on and so forth. And a committee was formed at that level. But then it was quickly recognized that the business at hand was both theological, liturgical, but also business as in money, logistics, and mobilizing resources, and that this might take a little bit more than theological and liturgical. So we did put together a committee that we have called the Central Executive Committee, CEC. And that one is headed by Right Honorable Rebecca Litwala Kadaga, is the chair. But then she has two co-chairs, three co-chairs. One from the northern side of the cluster, and that's Captain Mike Mukula. Northern zone being the Tesos and the Karamajongs. That was a zone. And Captain Mike Mukula is the co-chair from that end. Then there is the central zone, which is Mbale and Mbale North and Sebei. And the co-chair from there is Honorable Nandala Mafavi. And then there is the southern zone of that cluster, which is basically Bukedi and the two dioceses of Busoga. And there the co-chair is Honorable Both. This committee has subcommittees, including mobilization, finance, including protocol, invitations and so on, including publicity and media, of which I am the chair, and many other subcommittees. And as time has been getting closer to the 3rd of June, all these people have more or less moved the camp to the site at Namugongo. So that they don't do business long range, they don't do business by remote control, they do business at the site. So very many of these people are now in the camp at Namugongo site. and business is booming in terms of meetings, telephone calls, procurements, service providers, what have you. A lot of work is going on right now. That roughly is the structure of how we've been handling.
Well, that said, what could be, if there are, and one would say challenges, of course, have to be there, that you have faced as we gear up to this day?
There have been enormous challenges. Challenge number one, we've never done this before. We have to learn. We are learning on the job. And I remember the very first meeting that we had on this one, we called on our friends from Ankole who had done it before. And they came in, Honorable Ephraim Kamuntu, who had been the chair of last year's organizations, came and briefed us at great length. So that challenge was overcome. Two, the people we are put in place are big people, yes, but they're the generals, but they need their foot soldiers. This is a factor not of the big people in the dioceses, it's a factor of the Christians in the dioceses. And those radiate into all the churches, the smaller churches, all over that huge territory of the Eastern Cluster. The Eastern Cluster, by the way, Robert, is those of you who are my age and so on, is what we used to call the Upper Nile Diocese. There was a time before independence when the whole of Uganda had only two dioceses. Namirembe, representing the central and the western sectors of this country, and the Upper Nile, representing the east and the north and northwest. So this thing coming back to the east, we had to make sure that every Christian knows about it, participates in it, because they are the ones who are going to be the pilgrims to come here. So that was a challenge to publicize these facts. We did overcome that by courtesy of you, the media people. You have been very forthcoming. And as I said, we have had a media blast. And this has come in to inform and to educate our people. But that was a challenge that we have squarely met. The big one, the mother of all challenges, is the financial one.
Yes.
The financial one, to put together that organization, and then to put together the activities of June 3rd. And I hope you give me an opportunity to say something about the highlights of what's going to happen on June 3rd, requires huge budgetary resources. And the churches did get in, and we determined that each one of the 10 dioceses would raise 40 million shillings. So that by 10 of them, that's like 400 million. We are close to meeting there, but there's still a gap in that one. We are then to go to friends and well-wishers. And friend number one, the government of Uganda. They have come in a big, big way with quite a big envelope. We are still working on the fine details of it, but it should be in any time now. We went to corporate Uganda. I don't want to name names here because if I leave one, the others will feel
offended. Or
offended. But corporate Uganda has come in a big way. And I think we are talking like 200 million that we have garnered from them. And we thank them. And in due course, we will thank them more formally. Write to them and so on and so forth, invite them to the occasion. But finance, as always, has been a challenge. But the Lord will provide. We are people of faith. And when we have 5,000 people to feed, our Lord comes in with the 5 loaves, multiplies them, people are fed, and there's leftover of 12 baskets. So we believe that this time, the same miracle will be happening. And it's actually beginning to happen. Other challenges have been to get the people to come to this event. And get them to come to this event not as an extravaganza to have fun.
Yes.
That is not the meaning of pilgrimage.
Because of late you have two categories of people, or three.
Precisely.
That you have those that come really to worship, to think about the power that fueled these people to die for their faith.
Thank you
Then
very
there are
much.
those that really come because it's an event and with excitement. Some never even step at the shrines, but
It's
just
true.
within the Chali Wajara,
It's true.
Namugongo,
It's
eating pork juice. So much.
Sadly, so is true. It has to be an event. We have to enjoy it. But we have not. We don't do it the secular way. We do it the faith way. These matters, as I said before, give the ultimate sacrifice. And the celebrations and memorials that we do every year is to give an opportunity to those of us who live today, who live in the flesh, to come and say, today I'm going to rededicate myself at the field where these people lost their life. I'll come and give a sacrifice, dedicate myself, and come out as a new person, a new creation. That really is the essence of this. Because think about it deeply. These young men died almost 130, 140 years ago, but they still live. They still live because of what we are doing today. We make them live. The king silenced them by their voice. It's getting louder and louder and louder. They spilled blood, but that blood has become the seed of the church. It's sprouting and flourishing. That is the spirit in which we want our people to come to celebrate these events.
Well, time seems to be moving, but I can't let you go without mentioning some of the highlights of the day. Of course, my excitement for me is the amphitheater, where we are going to for the first time.
Yes.
Christians under the Protestant or Anglican shrine will not sit in grass under tree shades, but have a fairly decent way and place to sit and enjoy whatever will be going on.
A little history of Nakianja. Before Namugongo was Namugongo, by that name, it was called Nakianja, at least the Anglican side of it. How did it become Namugongo? The poor victims that were taken there were not taken like today. We have these big lorries and trucks from the prisons in Luzira. They were not taken in that comfort. They were dragged literally on their back. They tie the feet and the hand, and they drag you along the ground. And then people would ask, how did they arrive here? They say, oh, they arrived on their mugongo, on their back. And so the place got the name Namugongo. We do not want our pilgrims of today to arrive on their backs in that fashion and to stay there in suffering of that kind. And that's why we have put on a shed, a pavilion. And from now on, people will come and have that shed, a roof over them, so that even if it rains or shines, they can concentrate on the business that brought them devotion to the Martyrs. So the highlights of June 3rd, which is going to be a Saturday, is going to be a service, a church service. We are going to have guests, many guests, very, very important people. But chief among them, we expect the president of this country and a retinue of the leadership of this country. I do not want to overspeak on that one because really this is not a political event. And while His Excellency the President comes, he comes as a pilgrim like any other person. You remember when the Queen Elizabeth of England died the other day and she was going to be buried. I'm told the last thing that the Archbishop of Canterbury does is to remove all regalia of authority from the person of Elizabeth, the individual. They remove the throne, they remove the scepter, they remove everything, and the one person who goes into that grave is the human person, not the regal person. So while we entertain the president at these events of pilgrimages, we love to think of it as a pilgrim like any other. So it's not so much a highlight. Of course it's a highlight, but it's just a pilgrim. The other highlights are that it will be a service. We'll have a guest speaker, a guest preacher, the Archbishop of the USA, Archbishop Foley. We'll have communion. But we're also going to have in between there praise and singing and rejoicing. After all, the people that were burnt and roasted on that famous furnace, they were put on that furnace, and everybody expected them to be mourning and crying. Instead, they were singing. The people of the East, the 10 dioceses, are going to replicate that with a mammoth choir. We're bringing 40-member choir from each one of the dioceses. That makes 400 strong choir, and it will be in operation on that day. Those are some of the highlights for that day. Come.
Well, I'll just give you a minute or two to invite Ugandans to turn up for this event where, yes, we know many will be there, but of course an invitation being extended to you through Justice.
Thank you very much, Robert. Fellow Ugandans, it is our turn. It's the turn of Uganda to show the rest of the planet that we have faith, and that although we're a young country, hardly 60 years old as independent country, hardly 200 years old as an entity, we have given to the world what the old world had given to us, saints and so on. But we did it in style. In a matter of a year or so, we've given huge numbers of martyrs of Christ. 200 years ago we did that. We continue to do it. Modern martyrs. Archbishop Saint Janan Luwum is one such modern martyr. We have in the Catholic faith at a place called Paimol, somewhere between Gulu and Kitugum. Paimol has given the modern martyrs 2 young men, Okello and Jerua. They are on their way to being saints. This country, we should be proud of it. It's the moral high ground of the globe. Let's keep it that way. We'll keep it that way if you and me and everybody else comes to events like this one to edify and to glorify and to memorialize our history, and by doing that, to ensure that our future is secure, at least on the moral grounds. Welcome to Saturday. Welcome to Namugongo. Welcome to the pilgrims and the celebration of our pilgrims next Saturday, June 3rd.
Well, thank you so much, Canon Justice James Ogola, who happens to be the Chancellor of Bukedi Diocese and, of course, a member of the committee that is organizing on the Anglican side regarding Saturday's event, which is Martyrs Day, 3rd June. So much that we have learned, and of course, he's extended that warm welcome to have you there on that day. Well, I just want to say, let's stand up in huge numbers. Let's abide by the instructions, and a peaceful day, we hope, we shall have both at the Catholic and the Anglican shrines. God bless you. See you tomorrow, God willing. Good morning.